I spoke with CBS News correspondent Mola Lenghi about the previously unsealed documents released on Friday night on Jeffrey Epstein.
Documents which have been long expected to be made public finally dropped, as we say, yesterday, about 2,000 pages of previously sealed documents. And these stem from a civil case that had been settled between Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia Giuffre. It's a defamation case between these two. Giuffre is an alleged victim of Jeffrey Epstein, and Maxwell is an ex-girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, someone who has been accused of sort of being the right-hand man, so to speak, of Jeffrey Epstein, someone who recruited girls into the alleged sex ring, someone who was sort of the point person who directed young women who to allegedly have sex with, was kind of the chief operator, so to speak, of Epstein's alleged sex trafficking operation. In these documents, we were expecting to learn names. It was told that powerful people, well-connected people would be named in these documents. And some names were brought to attention. Now, we have to remember that the names that are mentioned in these documents are people who Virginia Giuffre, again, the alleged victim of Jeffrey Epstein, these are names that she brought, she made public in her testimonies, in her interviews with officials. People like former Senator George Mitchell, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson was named. Of course, both men have denied any sort of involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, have denied any improper relationships with any of the women, including Miss Giuffre, saying that they had never met Virginia Giuffre. Also, several other well-connected financiers, hedge fund managers, politically connected folks, all mentioned in the 2,000-page documents that were dropped. Again, these are accusations that were made by Virginia Giuffre, and they have been emphatically denied by the people who were named in these documents.
Now that Jeffrey Epstein is dead, will the focus now turn to these women in particular and this case, now that this has been unsealed and it's really exposed out there into the public?
Yeah, well, I mean, what happens next is going to be, is going to certainly be, an interesting focal point. Obviously, the criminal cases go away. You can't prosecute someone who's dead, as Jeffrey Epstein is. But the civil cases against Jeffrey Epstein, and there are multiple ones out there, and as more victims come forward, we imagine that more cases will be brought forward. These civil cases can go forward against his estate, assuming there is no statute of limitations issues. Also, something else to keep in mind, now that, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, coupled with the fact that he really has no immediate family, there's no one to challenge any additional search warrants of any of his properties. And he has multiple properties, obviously. We know he's got the New York mansion, the Virgin Islands property. He's got the property in New Mexico. And so there's really no one left to challenge any search warrants if prosecutors decide to pursue additional search warrants of these properties. And it's said that there could be more evidence in his homes. What that may lead to if they do discover more evidence, there could be more people charged. I mean, at this point, Epstein has been the focus of the criminal investigations. Obviously, all the charges have focused on him, but there have been folks calling for more charges. Some of the victims have pointed to Ghislaine Maxwell as someone who, again, was the right-hand man, so to speak, helped orchestrate the alleged sex trafficking ring. No charges have been brought against her. So if more evidence turns up, that is something certainly that prosecutors would look into and want to pursue. And prosecutors have said that they are looking into perhaps pursuing more individuals, more uncharged individuals, especially as more evidence comes forward and more victims come forward as they continue to do.
And do we have a sense if there will be any more unsealed documents that could come out in the coming weeks?
At this point, no. But of course, as this investigation continues, again, Epstein, obviously, with him now being dead, cannot. There will be no criminal charges moving forward on him. But this is an extremely wide-ranging investigation, and it is not the sort of investigation that you would imagine prosecutors would just drop, especially if there are other people to be charged, if there are other potential, people to pursue. Yeah. And so with that, as this investigation continues in other directions, of course, more information and more details and more evidence could come forward.
Well, I just want to let you know we are getting an official statement from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and this is dated, obviously, Saturday, August 10th. Approximately 6:30 a.m., inmate Jeffrey Edward Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell in the Special Housing Unit from an apparent suicide at the Metropolitan Correction Center, MCC, in New York. Life-saving measures were initiated immediately by responding staff. Staff requested emergency medical services, EMS, and life-saving efforts continued. Mr. Epstein was transported by EMS to a local hospital for treatment of life-threatening injuries and subsequently pronounced dead by hospital staff. The FBI is investigating the incident. Mr. Epstein was a 66-year-old male and arrived at MCC, New York on July 6th. Under pre-trial status after being indicted for sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. MCC New York is an administrative security facility that currently houses 763 male offenders in New York, New York. So as we look ahead, Mola, you've combed through some of these documents. You've seen the big names in bold and many of these men in politics, in business. Hedge fund owners have come forward saying that they deny these allegations. What's your sense about where this case goes at this point?
Continue to investigate. Obviously, any allegation by any of these victims, any of the alleged victims, will be things that prosecutors take seriously and look into. So you'd imagine that they're going to vet each one of the allegations and each one of the accusations. As far as who may be charged, which of these accusations are in fact true, which of the powerful, well-connected politicians or world leaders or financiers committed any sort of any criminal acts. Obviously, that's going to be something that investigators are going to have to look into. I certainly don't know, the answers to those questions. But again, this investigation is certainly not over just with the death of Jeffrey Epstein. It's something that prosecutors will continue to look into. And again, we have been told that victims continue to come forward, and as these victims come forward, they will be able to detail not just Jeffrey Epstein's role in this, in the alleged trafficking operation, but all the people that helped make it happen, all the other people that were involved, whether it was his fellow, or I should say his employees, the people who coordinated, the people who scheduled these alleged acts, and also the people who were involved in the sexual acts. So that, again, this is something that prosecutors will continue to look into far beyond the death of Jeffrey Epstein.